Hello, it's your boy Wilder of the Justice Sovereigns for IPA Season 7 Mini-R League. I'm going to be analyzing my draft today, so let's just get right into it. For those who don't know, IPA is a point-based draft, which means instead of just taking mons whenever you want or having a tier list, each Pokemon is worth a certain amount of points, so you can draft them as you like, based on your point budget. My first overall pick for the draft was Mega Mawile because I was 5th pick and Mega Mawile wasn't taken, and there was no way I wasn't taking it. I've never actually used Mega Mawile in a draft before, but it's really simple to use, considering that it basically what it does is it just hits hard. It has a 105 base attack, coupled with huge power. It can tear even things that resist it if they don't have enough bulk. Like Vaporeon, I'm almost certain gets 2-hit KO'd by Play Rough. It also gets a decent amount of coverage as well. It's not amazing, but it's what it needs. It gets both of its stabs, but it also gets Fire Fang and Thunder Punch and Sucker Punch, which is great because it's really slow and it could really use the strong priority. Mega Mawile also gets Swords Dance, which is great because after a Swords Dance, it can basically shred through pretty much anything that isn't named Dual Blade. And even then, it pretty sure it gets at least 3 KO'd by a +2 Fire Fang. In addition, it gets some utility moves like Taunt and Stealth Rock and even Magnet Rise if you're feeling that way. So at this point, I was noting the fire and ground weaknesses, since at this point I'm kind of going to base my draft around Mega Mawile. So I decided to get something that is both good in its own right and can resist both of those, so I ended up choosing Latias. I chose that over Latios because it's 1 point less than Latios, and I was feeling stingy. I haven't used Latias in draft before, but I have used Mega Latios, and I drafted it last season and got my butt handed to me. But this season I'm hoping to make a change, and Latias is a good bulky alternative to Latios, and it's also cheaper, like I mentioned earlier. So I'm planning on using this. Latias has the rare combination of great bulk and reliable recovery, which I love in a Pokemon, so I'm going to be using this thing a lot alongside Mega Mawile, which can't take hits that well. And Latias can set up on its own with Calm Mind, so I will probably be using that a lot as well. Latias' speed is also great at 110, so it helps with Mega Mawile since it really can't hit things fast besides Sucker Punch, and some things resist Sucker Punch and blow Mega Mawile back. So having a nice speed tier and even Tailwind if I feel like it is nice for a little bit of speed control. I believe it gets Icy Wind as well, so if I feel like going the setup route, I could also do that. At this point in the draft with Mega Mawile and Latias, someone in front of me has Excadrill, so I kind of want to take Tyranitar to keep them from getting that good sand core of Excadrill and Tyranitar, and it benefits my team, so I end up taking Tyranitar round 3 despite what I originally planned, which was nothing by the way. I had no plan for this draft. Tyranitar is one of those Pokemon that can basically do anything besides remove hazards, and that's really about it. It has really, really good bulk, and coupled with Sandstream and being a rock type, its special defense gets boosted, so it's even better at that. Its typing is one of its biggest downfalls, as it has a lot of weaknesses, but it also has a lot of good resistances, and with its bulk, its super effective hits aren't usually doing much anyway if they're weak. Tyranitar gets Stealth Rocks, which is really good because my only rocker at this point is Mega Mawile, and Mega Mawile isn't the best rocker in my opinion. Tyranitar also gets Dragon Dance, which means if I don't need setup, if I'm, say, running Defog Latias and all-out attacking Mega Mawile, then I can run Dragon Dance Tyranitar to catch people off guard. And considering its attack stat is insane and its speed isn't terrible, especially since you're using a speed-boosting setup move, it can sweep really easily if teams aren't prepared for setup T-Tar, because it really isn't that common. Tyranitar also gets a ridiculous amount of coverage. It gets the Elemental Fangs, it gets the Elemental Punches, it gets its stabs, it gets Earthquake, it gets Outrage for if you want to hit like all 2 dragon types that you'll need super effective coverage on. It gets Aqua Tail, and it can even run specially offensive. It gets Ice Beam, it gets Fire Blast, I believe. It gets Thunderbolt. It doesn't really get a special rock move. At least I don't believe it does. It could get like Ancient Power, but Ancient Power is kind of bad. But it can definitely catch people off guard if they just switch in their like dedicated physical tank and suddenly they have 30% of their health left because they whopped it with an Ice Beam. At this point in the draft, I have a bit of a recurring ground weakness with 2 weaknesses and 1 immunity, especially considering my 2 weaknesses are both pretty good Pokemon. So I kind of want to get a ground resistance or immunity in addition to some removal, because right now Latias is my only removal, and if I want to run setup Latias, I don't want to get stuck with just having to always run no removal or set up Latias. So I decided to pick up Crobat because it does both of the things I need it to do. And I used it last season, so it's not a bad pick. Crobat's a bit of a weird Pokemon because it seems conventional at first, and then you realize its attack stats aren't that great. It has average bulk, and its typing is weird. It has some key immunities and resistances that really help it out, but at the same time, it has really common weaknesses to electric and ice and rock, and being weak to rock when you're a hazard remover isn't that great. On the plus side, though, it does have a base 130 speed, which pretty much completely nullifies all of those problems because it's outspeeding almost everything in the game, basically. Crobat's fun because it actually gets Giga Drain, which means it doesn't lose to ground types, even though it is immune to ground, just because they have rock coverage. In addition, it gets Nasty Plot, so if for whatever reason I want to set up Crobat when I have 3 of the best setup sweepers in the game, I can. Maybe I have a type-in advantage or something. The enemy's team is really weak to poison or really weak to flying, or maybe they're really weak to fire, and they also have a lot of fast Pokemon, but none really faster than Crobat. I can run Nasty Plot Crobat and pretty much sweep their team if I have enough support. Crobat, as I said, gets to Fog, so it'll probably be my main hazard remover. Well, I suppose you'll have to see once I finish this draft, but it'll probably end up being my main hazard remover, as it's just really fast and clears hazards really easily a lot of the time. My draft is really solid as of now, so I just kind of wanted to go for a fun pick. My team, like a lot of the Pokemon, are just really good, but not necessarily the most fun to play. Well, a lot of them are fun, but I just wanted to go for something just kind of off the wall and a bit commonly used, but really not used to what I think is its fullest potential. So I'm going for the newest member, Darmanitan. Darmanitan's great just because it has 95 base speed and 140 base attack, and that really just means it's going to be running Scarf a lot of the time, or have some sort of speed control, because if you have paper-thin defenses like Darmanitan does, and you have a 95 base speed, you're kind of wanting speed control or a Scarf. But having a 140 base attack, sheer force, and a bunch of attacking moves will probably mean anything you're facing will probably die at some point. Along with that, Darmanitan has a Zen mode feature, which is kind of hard to use and really not great. But quote me on this, I will use it at some point in this draft league. At least one battle, whether it be playoffs or regular season, I will use Zen mode Darmanitan in a battle. And I can't guarantee it'll activate Zen mode itself, but I will bring Darmanitan with Zen mode. Darmanitan actually gets, I believe, a decent amount of special coverage besides Fire and Psychic. Gets Focus Blast and gets Grass Knot and the Hidden Powers, and that's it. So no, not great coverage, but it's really all it needs when you have a base 140 special attack, great bulk, and I guess passable speed. The main draw to Darmanitan, though, is obviously that just it hits like the truck that ran over my dog when I was 5. It's amazing at hitting things really, really hard. So at this point in the draft, a lot of you will probably be noticing that my team is very, very physical. I have 3, like, pretty much dead set physical attackers, unless you count Special T-Tar or Zen mode Darmanitan. I have one that's kind of in the middle with Crobat, and then I have a special attacker in Latias. So I kind of want to not only get a good special attacker, but also continue my Fire, Water, Grass core. So I did make transactions after the draft and the grace period, so my draft's a little different from here, but what I ended up going with my final draft is Superior. Despite the fact that I love this thing in battle, I've never actually used it in a draft league before, so this is my first chance with it. So what Superior does, for those who don't know, is it clicks Leaf Storm, and that's it. Like, you'll very rarely see it ever click another move, besides maybe Glare and Substitute, and occasionally Hidden Power Fire if pesky Steel types get in your way, because it is Contrary, which boosts your stats if they get lowered and lowers them if they get increased. So Leaf Storm, which would normally destroy your special attack stat, ends up bolstering it. So it can sweep through teams really easily if you leave it unchecked. Like, if there's an Alomomola sitting there and it switches and you manage to get a Leaf Storm off, it's going to be very hard for the opponent to bring it back. Along with that, Superior's defenses aren't the best, but they're good enough so it can take some hits, neutral and resisted, and sweep the opponent's team. Along with that, it has a really, really good base speed stat, 113. So it's able to outspeed things that would normally be able to one-shot it and one-shot them back. Another cool thing about Superior is that after Ultra Sun and Moon, it gets to Fog. So if my Latias and Crobat weren't hazard removal enough, I certainly have enough Defoggers now. And it also deters Defog, because if you hit it with Defog, its evasion goes up instead of down. So now you're dealing with a +1 evasion Superior. And the same goes for Sticky Webs, although my team isn't really weak to webs. So my Superior will get a +1 speed boost and pretty much outspeed everything. Even Scarfers like Darmanitan will get outsped by Superior. So it's a very valuable addition to my team, especially since my Stealth Rockers can get beaten by certain defoggers like Rotom Wash very easily, so having something that can destroy those while deterring defog is great. Right now my team is very bulky, which is great, but I also don't really have any clerics of any kind, really, besides Latias, and Latias is a pretty bad cleric, so I wanted to get something that can support my bulky team and give them the support they need, while also fulfilling my Fire Water Grass core. And I wasn't taking a little Momola because I'm not a scrub, so I ended up taking Vaporeon. Vaporeon's kind of a forgettable Pokemon in competitive, mainly because not many people realize that it isn't really passive. It has a base 110 special attack stat, and it gets access to Hydro Pump. So if I really wanted to, I could run offensive Vaporeon and take some lives. Along with that, it gets Ice Beam. I'm sure it gets some other coverage. It gets Shadow Ball. It gets Signal Beam and Synchronize. I have no idea why I'd run Synchronize besides destroying Tentacruel, but I have it. And in addition to that, it gets Haze. It obviously gets Wish, which is really, really useful for keeping my team healthy. It gets Heal Bell, which is nice for also keeping my team healthy. And it's very bulky with 130 HP, and it doesn't really matter what the rest of the stats are. You have 130 HP, you're living hits. Like, even if my defense was 5, I'd probably still avoid the 2-hit KO from a resisted hit. So right now, my team is pretty solid. If we only got the chance to have 7 Mons, I could end the draft right here, and my team would still be pretty solid. But I want a Rapid Spinner, because I love Rapid Spinners, and having a Rapid Spinner on my team is very useful. So I decided to take the best Rapid Spinner available, in my opinion, that wasn't Fortress, because I already have a Steel type. Sorry guys, no mascot. So I am taking Donphan. Donphan is just a good example of just being a good Pokemon. It does its one job very, very well, and it can do some other things as well. It gets Stealth Rock and Rapid Spin, which is basically what it's going to be doing. Mostly Rapid Spinning, though. Getting rid of hazards that I need to get rid of. It gets a lot of really oddball coverage. It gets Earthquake, obviously, but it also gets Poison Jab and Gunk Shot. It gets Knockoff. It gets Seed Bomb. It gets Ice Shard. And it even gets Bounce, which doesn't seem useful until I whip out the Supersonic Sky Strike and destroy anything in my path. In addition to that, Donphan is really physically bulky. It doesn't have as much defense as Fortress, but it certainly has more HP. So it's just a little bit less physically bulky than Fortress, and it also gets Sturdy. Never heard that one before. Rapid Spinner that gets Stealth Rocks and Sturdy and is physically bulky instead of specially bulky. Wow, never heard that one before. But it gets Sandveil, and I'm not completely sure whether Sandveil is allowed. I've asked like twice, and I've forgotten each time. But if it is, then I have Tyranitar and a Donphan and Sandveil, so I can run offensive with the Elemental Feigns minus Ice Feign to sweep unprepared teams. But it probably isn't allowed, so I'm probably just being hopeful for no reason. And finally, with 6 points in my draft left, I don't really have much to get that my team doesn't already have. I could grab a fighting type, but there are really no good fighting types that are worth 6 points in my opinion. I do need a Volt Switcher, which is actually what I ended up going for. Getting a nice, strong Volt Switcher is what I was going for. Maybe something slow so I can get into my powerful, bulky Pokemon without having them to take damage. So I ended up going with Vikavolt because it really fills all of those qualities. In addition to filling up the fact that I really have no quote-unquote powerful special attacker, because I believe my most powerful special attacker at this moment is Vaporeon. So I needed something desperately to boost my specially offensive pressure before a physical wall sweeps my team. So I ended up going with Vikavolt. It helps with my ground weakness because now my Volt Switcher isn't fodder to ground types because it's immune to ground and it can shatter their lives with Energy Ball. It gets Roost. I don't know how often I'll be running Roost, but it gets Roost. I can run stuff like Choice Specs. It gets some physical coverage, even though its physical attack isn't the best. But if I want to have some fun and destroy a Chansey or something, I can always take that route. It gets some speed control and Electro Web and Thunder Wave. So if I need some speed control, and let's be honest, I have a base 43 speed. Most things are going to be outspeeding me, even when they're paralyzed. So yeah, that's my draft for the season. As of the beginning of week 1, my draft is right there. I'll be facing Tom week 1, and I'm probably going to get destroyed because Tom is a very competent battler, and I've had him in other leagues. He's very skilled, and his team has a very interesting theme to it, so I'm going to have fun battling him this week. So if I remember, I'll upload the replay or something, but probably not because I don't get that many chances to record. But I'll see you guys. I'll see you in the next video, in the next year, probably, considering I never upload. I'm sorry, guys. Love you. Bye.